Then my final talk, this is on the evaluation of apple rootstocks against apple replant disease. This project is in collaboration with Dr. Nigel Cook and Professor Adele McLeod. And here, the research focus is basically to determine these rootstocks that we have. Is there anything that can give us an advantage that makes us less reliable on fumigants going into the future? So this is a progressive approach to the fact that fumigants are probably going to become less available over time. So if there is a genetic way that we can tackle this problem, we need to be aware of it. The trial set up here, we've got two trials. The first trial we planted in 2021, 10 rootstocks. There's a single cultivar. It's 3 trials, which is 3 vigor classes. So each vigor class is a separate trial. 2 treatments, 6 replicates, 6 trees per replicate, and it's a complete randomized block design with a split plot layout. Then in the second trial, we've got actually 2 plantings, a 2022-2023 planting. We've planted 11 rootstocks. These are unbudded, so we've planted these between commercial trees. We've asked the producers basically to leave a row unfumigated, and then we've planted the same rootstocks in the fumigated and unfumigated. And we are basically there just determining the growth differences across the same rootstocks. 5 replicates in this trial, 3 trees per replicate. That's a complete randomized block design. We did do pot trials in all of these locations prior to planting to confirm that there was, in fact, replant pressure. What was and is measured? So we measure tree height, trunk diameter. In the 2021 planting, we've done mineral leaf analysis. We quantified the pathogens on the roots prior to planting. We also quantified the pathogens on the unfumigated roots a year after planting. And now, as the trees are in bearing, we calculate also, collect the total fruit per tree to calculate the yield. In trial 2, it's a much simpler trial. We just measure tree height, trunk diameter to determine if there are differences for the same rootstock in the fumigated and not fumigated treatments. We've also built in, at the end of those trials, nematode quantification. So we just also sample from the roots just to get an idea again about more information on the nematodes. And then we've also built in woolly apple aphid quantification. So we would like to see whether or not there are any rootstocks that are less susceptible to woolly apple aphid. So the preliminary results. We find that fumigation does have a positive effect, but that the effects are not consistent across vigor classes or parameters measured. So the top graph there is from the first trial. It is the yield of last year. You'll see, for instance, from left to right, fumigation increased the yield of Geneva 228, but it didn't significantly increase the yield of 778, but it quite substantially improved the yield of 890, but it didn't do that for M793, but it did for MM109. So again, what we would have liked to have seen is a consistent effect, but we see that fumigation is not necessarily consistent. In trial 2, we also see that not all of the rootstocks were significantly affected in terms of the trunk cross-sectional area increase for the first year by fumigation. So I've just circled those in red, rootstocks where fumigation didn't significantly increase the trunk cross-sectional area growth for the first year. So fumigation there again also not consistently having an influence on that parameter. We also found that the response of rootstock varies depending on the environment. So in trial 2, where we've planted in multiple environments, we couldn't say that regardless of the environment, this rootstock is consistently not improved by fumigation, which would mean that it was not susceptible to replant. So in some environments, fumigation improved certain parameters for a rootstock, and in some environments, it didn't necessarily do that. So again, the results from the rootstock perspective are also that we do not find a consistent rootstock that is good or tolerant against these pathogens. And then, I guess importantly as well, is that the Geneva rootstocks at this stage don't appear to be less susceptible than the traditional rootstocks that we have. So in the first trial where we've planted in the 3 vigor classes, we planted with a Merton control. Also, what we would have liked to have seen is that the Merton control was susceptible and that the Geneva rootstocks were less susceptible, but fumigation tended to have, as I said, inconsistent effects, and also it's not inconsistent only to the Merton rootstocks, it's also to the Geneva rootstocks. So the take-home message here, replant is complex. There doesn't look like there's a universal solution. Fumigation can help, but it's not consistent, as I said, and also it doesn't seem like any of the rootstocks, whether they are Geneva or Merton, can offer us a silver bullet. This picture that I've put here, I actually asked AI to generate a puzzle for me, and this was the puzzle that I got. I originally wasn't going to use it, but I think it actually is better to illustrate the message. We've got a bunch of tools at our disposal as growers, as researchers, and sometimes the puzzle doesn't always fit. And I think what we have to do is basically make use of what we have. We have a specific environment, we have access to these tools, and we've got to try and put everything together in a way that ultimately gives us the best profitability for the business that we are busy running. So with that, I just want to say thank you very much for listening to me. If you would like to get in contact with me, my information is there. I'm more than happy to answer any emails or take any phone calls. And lastly, I just want to acknowledge there's a huge number of people, number of organizations that come together for these trials. And really, without all of the input, it wouldn't be possible for us to deliver insights that are meaningful to the industry. So I'm really just the front person, but there's a lot more going into it in the background. So thank you very much to all of those institutions and organizations and people.